All right, let's go ahead and jump in. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jesse Gabriel. I am really proud to represent the San Fernando Valley in the California State Legislature. Really proud to be the dad of three amazing kids. Proud to be the author of Assembly Bill 2316, the California Food Safety Act, and also proud to be joined today by these two amazing leaders who are going to be speaking today: Superintendent of Public Instruction Tony Thurmond, actress and activist Leslie Ann Brandt, and then we have Dr. Juliana Mello, who may or may not be joining us. She was actually called into surgery this morning, which we knew was a possibility. So if she's able to get on in time and join us, she will. But anyway, we are just so delighted to have the superintendent and Leslie Ann joining us this morning. And we wanted to give you an update to talk a little bit about Assembly Bill 2316, the California Food Safety Act, both a little bit about what this bill does, and then the significance of the moment that we're in as we near the end of our legislative session, as the bill faces a critical vote in the Senate Appropriations Committee, and what the path forward looks like. So just to give everybody a sense of the run of show, I'm going to share a few high-level remarks about the bill, and then I'm going to turn it over to our sponsor, the Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state of California, Superintendent Tony Thurmond. We're going to hear from Leslie Ann, and then we will open it up to questions and answers. For folks who do have questions, you can use the Q&A feature. You can just put your questions into the chat feature, and we will do our best to answer them. So with that, let me just give you a little bit of overview of the bill. So Assembly Bill 2316 is the California School Food Safety Act. It is first in the nation legislation that would ban California public schools from serving foods that contain chemicals that have been linked to harms with children and that interfere with their ability to learn. This bill is actually based on research and science done by the state of California. In 2021, the California Environmental Protection Agency released a comprehensive research report looking at research done in many different circumstances, both on humans and on animals, and concluded pretty unequivocally that synthetic food dyes, which are the target of this bill, 6 synthetic food dyes, can cause harm to children, that they can cause hyperactivity and other neurobehavioral problems in our children. The report also noted, very importantly, that FDA research allowing these chemicals to be used in food was 35 to 70 years old and was insufficient to actually protect young people. So we think that there's very strong research behind this bill. We would also note that the chemicals that are targeted in this bill are required in Europe to have products including them are required actually to have a warning label that says that those products can cause harm to young people. And I want to speak just personally. This bill is important to me as a lawmaker. It's important to me as a parent. It's important to me as somebody who struggled with ADHD as a child. And it's important to me as a parent of a child who is struggling with ADHD. We know that the synthetic food dyes that are targeted by this bill can cause harm to all kids, but we know that there is a especially pronounced impact on a lot of our young people with ADHD and other challenges. And so for me, it just makes no sense when the superintendent and others are out there, our teachers are working so hard to help our students achieve, that we would be putting all this effort and energy and love into our young people, and then feeding them some food at lunch or at recess that is actually going to undermine all of that good work, that is going to increase their challenges, that it's going to make it harder for them to focus in the classroom and ultimately harm them. And I believe that we as lawmakers and as parents have a responsibility to protect our kids. We have a responsibility to make sure that the food that we serve them in our public schools is not going to harm them and is not going to interfere with their ability to learn. And that's what this bill would do. Let me clear up a couple of things just off the bat. First of all, this bill is not a ban on any foods. It is not a ban on any products. We do not believe that a single product is going to come off the shelf here. The point of this bill is to encourage manufacturers to make minor modifications to their recipes so that they can serve these same foods that we all love, that our kids love, but without these dangerous chemicals that harm people. We have incredible confidence that they're able to do that. And we know that because they make these same products in Europe, they make these same products in Asia, they make these same products in so many countries around the world, just without the harmful chemicals. And so we think it's time that we also get the safer versions of these foods and products here in our schools in the state of California. Let me say a couple of words about the moment that we were at. For those of you that are followers of Sacramento and of our legislative session here, you know that we are It is crunch time here in Sacramento. We have returned from our recess. We have less than 1 month left of our legislative session. And this bill has so far passed through the California Assembly with a strong bipartisan vote. It has passed every single policy committee. It passed the Senate Education Committee with a unanimous bipartisan vote. And we now stand just steps away from Governor Newsom's desk. We have a key vote coming up in the Senate Appropriations Committee next week. And then hopefully we are off to the Senate floor and to Governor Newsom's desk. I think this is a notable moment for this bill. First, because of the strong bipartisan support that it has received that I mentioned. I think it is very noteworthy in a day and age when we are so divided by politics that both progressive Democrats and in many cases some very conservative Republicans have come together to support this bill. We believe very strongly that protecting the health and safety of our kids should not be a partisan issue. It is a common sense issue. It is something that we should all get behind as parents. And I also want to note the incredible broad and powerful coalition that has gotten behind this bill. And we are obviously extremely grateful to our superintendent for being the key sponsor of this bill. But we have doctors, we have nurses, we have healthcare professionals, we have school administrators, we have classroom teachers, we have school board officials from up and down the state of California, more than 70 organizations that have gotten behind this bill and said it is time for California to step up and lead in protecting our children. And so we're hopeful that because of that incredible coalition, because of the incredible supporters that we have, that we will be able to successfully move this bill through the Appropriations Committee, off the Senate floor, and on to Governor Newsom's desk. And we believe very strongly that passing this bill, having it signed into law, would be a major victory for the food safety movement, not only here in the state of California, but also nationally. And let me be clear, the purpose of this bill is first and foremost to protect kids, protect families, protect consumers here in the state of California. But we firmly believe that this bill, if signed into law, will have a national impact. And we believe that it will prompt nationwide changes to popular foods marketing towards children. We know that because of supply chains work, because of how food manufacturers work, we think it's unlikely that folks are going to produce one version of their product for California and a different version for Kansas. So we believe that if this bill is signed into law, it's going to have the additional added benefit of helping to protect kids across the United States. We also think that it's going to put some pressure on the FDA to step up and do the right thing. For those of you who've been following the work that we did, you know that last year, California passed AB 418, Assembly Bill 418, the California Food Safety Act. This is the California School Food Safety Act. But the bill that we passed last year banned the use of 4 toxic chemicals in foods here in the state of California. All of these chemicals banned in other countries around the world. The United States, for whatever reason, is behind the rest of the world. But we stepped up. California did this. It was first in the nation bill. And we saw already after California passed that bill last year, the FDA has moved. And just a few weeks ago announced that it is banning brominated vegetable oil, joining many other countries around the world that have done that because of the science is so strong of the harms that BVO, that brominated vegetable oil, can cause. So we see that when California acts, we can and steps up to the plate, we can actually encourage the FDA to move forward to do the work that it needs to do. And we also know that other states are going to follow us. At last count, at least 10 other states have introduced legislation based on the California's Food Safety Act that was signed into law last year. I actually was going back and forth earlier this week with a Republican state representative from the East Coast who is working on similar legislation in her state house to try to make sure that kids in that state are safe as well. So again, we think that this would be a tremendous victory. We think it will have major implications for supply chains across the United States of America, but most importantly, will protect our most precious resource, our most precious asset, which is our young people here in the state of California. So we are excited to do this work. And let me turn it over now to someone who's been an incredible partner. That is our State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond. He is the sponsor of this bill. He leads the largest public school system in the nation with more than 6.3 million students and 10,000 schools. And we're just so grateful, Superintendent, for your vocal leadership on this bill. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Assemblymember Gabriel. Thank you for your incredible leadership. It's an honor to partner with you to promote the passage of AB 2316. This is about our kids. How else can I say it? We have the opportunity to help keep young people healthy, and we know that that is critical to their academic success and to their social development. And so it's an honor to be a sponsor and to join you and Leslie Ann Brandt, and others in advocating for this bill. As the state superintendent, I have the responsibility to support 1,000 school districts in our state. And one of the areas where we support our school districts is in what we provide for our students. Ours is the first state to guarantee universal meals for California students. That means every student gets 2 meals a day free, regardless of their background or their neighborhood. And what they get should be something that is healthy. This is a great continuation of efforts taking place in our state where we have a great farm to table movement, and we have school districts that have committed to providing organic cereal and breakfast for our students. But this is taking us in a direction that, as the Assembly member has said, has the ability to change practice all across the nation, and creating an environment that will prevent our students from experiencing, neurobehavioral challenges. And so let us move forward in passing this measure and banning the use of these synthetic food dyes in the food that our kids eat, and giving them an opportunity to be healthy. I come to you as an advocate for our school districts, but also as a parent of a child who has a very severe food allergy. And so, in that way, and as someone who myself as a student grew up on the free lunch program, depending on what our schools provide, it is in that context that I come to you today advocating that we make this change, that we follow the research that was provided to us by California's Environmental Protection Agency that says these dyes have harmful effects on those who consume them. And so now we have an opportunity to make a great change, and we're excited to support this legislation and to support the well-being of our students. And we look forward to working closely with the Assembly member and all the advocates on the work that we need to do to get this bill signed into law on behalf of California's children.
Thank you so much, Mr. Superintendent. We really do appreciate your leadership on this and on so many other issues. I am now really thrilled and delighted to turn it over to Leslie Ann Brandt. You probably recognize her from binge watching the many shows that she has been in. She's a very talented actress, but also an advocate on protecting young people, on food safety, on health and nutrition, and someone who has been an outspoken leader in this space. And so, Leslie Ann, we are really delighted to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here, and I thank you both for the work that you're doing. As you can hear, I'm not from America. I'm via South Africa and New Zealand. So I grew up in two very different food systems, and I really noticed the difference coming to the States 14 years ago. I'm a mother. I'm also the older sister of a brother who had severe ADHD as a child. So I got to see firsthand the impact of nutrition and how it helped him. And one of the first things my mother did to try and avoid just heavily medicating him was to look at his nutrition and to look at the processed sugars and to look at the ingredients and the food dyes and the synthetic chemicals that just was not going to serve him in school. And it really was the difference between a B student and a C student for him. And that impacted his confidence as well. And also his classmates, and his teacher. And they worked very closely with his school, with his teacher to understand his challenges and to move forward. So when I look at my own son at 7 years old, I'm looking at, what I'm giving him, what is important for him to have not just a productive day at school, but also to keep him healthy. And as both the Assembly member and the superintendent has mentioned, these dyes, these synthetic chemicals, they contribute to these neurological behavioral issues, to diseases like cancer, to harm to their immune system, but also puts unnecessary pressure, additional pressure on our teachers who are already dealing with so much post-COVID. It seems to me completely self-defeating, harmful to our kids, and I think undermines the investments we've already made to provide children with support and resources on one end, but to then at lunch, as the Assembly member said, expose them to chemicals that will only exacerbate their challenges or create challenges that perhaps didn't exist there. When one child in the classroom struggles, and I've seen it firsthand in my son's classroom, Everyone does, and it affects their day. It affects their ability to learn. And you're in the business, superintendent, of educating children, ensuring that we're giving them all the resources they have to be able to be, upstanding members of society. And I think in the context as someone who moved here from another country, food is such an important part of that. I do a lot of work with schools in Cape Town in South Africa, where I'm from. We build safe space, studios for kids who practice mindfulness, but then we also grow vegetables, and we teach them about, nurturing your mind, but also nurturing your body, and how those two things are interlinked. So I guess I just want to leave it, when you help one child in the classroom, you're essentially helping all of those kids, and taking the pressure off of our healthcare system too, to be quite frank. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leslie, and we really, really appreciate you being here with us today and all of your advocacy on this issue. And I think you teed up the point that our last speaker, who unfortunately got called into surgery, was going to make, is that medical professionals stand strongly behind these bills. So for anybody who has questions about the science, we are really proud to have the California Medical Association, which represents our doctors here in the state of California, in support of this bill. We're really proud of the doctors and the nurses and the healthcare professionals that have come to committee, testified strongly in support of the bill. And I think it gives you a sense that these people, our pediatricians and others who are looking out for the development of our young people, also understand that it's really important that we take toxic and dangerous chemicals out of the foods that we are serving to them. So that is a really important point, and one that we are really proud to have the support of California's medical community, in addition to our classroom teachers, in addition to our educators, in addition to the PTA behind this. We're going to go ahead and open it to questions now, and I see we already have one in the chat. Let me just say a couple of things about this in conclusion. We believe that this is a very righteous effort. And I have to say this, somebody who grew up in the United States of America, who never thought much about food, who ate all of the delicious junk food that is available to kids growing up in the United States, I didn't really understand this issue. And it was not until I became a parent, and really not until I became a lawmaker and started to speak to advocates about this, that I began to understand how different the United States is than the rest of the world. And it made no sense to me that toxic chemicals that are prohibited from being used in food in 27 nations in Europe, all over Asia, all over Latin America, are somehow allowed in our food supply here in the United States. And I said, I don't think my kids in California should be any less safe and any less protected than kids in Sweden or South Korea or Saudi Arabia. And yet that's unfortunately the reality of where we are today. In those other countries, they are doing more to protect their kids from dangerous chemicals than we are here in the United States. And that's not right. And that's something that this bill is going to change. So first question we have here is from ABC7 Los Angeles. It says, can you list some examples of food where these toxins are found? So it's a great question. So the bill is targeting 6 synthetic food dyes. These are dyes that are used to give foods and beverages really vibrant colors. So if you see something that's a really bright blue or really vibrant green, it's often because it's had these food dyes added to it. So that would be things like chips, candies, soda, baked goods that might have some of these things. What's important to understand about all of these is for every one of those food dyes, first of all, they're all non-essential ingredients. None of them need to be in food. They don't impact the taste of food. And for every single one of them, there is a readily available known substitute to the industry. You can get those colors with things like pomegranate juice. You can get those colors with other naturally occurring ingredients that aren't dangerous for kids. So unfortunately, these food dyes are in a lot of our products, but we know that actually there's a lot of products that are being sold and being served in public schools that don't have them. And one point I want to make here is that there's a number of districts across the state, including some of our large urban districts like LAUSD and smaller rural districts that have already removed foods containing these dyes because they can say, okay, we'll switch from one brand of chips to another, or we'll switch from one brand of applesauce to another. And by making that small transition, they have been able to serve the same foods. It has not cost them more, but they've been able to protect young people. The next question is from Gabriel Arizon. It says, in March, the bill was targeting titanium dioxide in 6 synthetic food dyes. Is that still the case? Have any of them been removed? So great question. Along the journey, we have actually removed titanium dioxide. That was one of the chemicals that was part of this bill. Initially, a little bit different than the other food dyes. In part of our conversations as we were moving this bill through the process, we made the decision to go ahead and remove that chemical, in part because we really want this to be a bipartisan bill. And we want it to pass with strong bipartisan support. We think that is an important message, both here in the state of California. As I said, this should not be a partisan issue. It's a common sense issue, protecting our kids, and also because we want to be able to send a message on that nationally. So the 6 synthetic food dyes that are the focus of this bill are still in it, and we are hopeful that we are going to be able to take this bill to Governor Newsom's desk. The next question is from Kristen Rogers. Can you confirm where you are in the process of this bill being signed into law or not by Governor Newsom? If that's the only step you're awaiting at this point, when do you anticipate that the governor will make a decision? So we are very close, but not quite there, to sending this bill to the governor's desk. As the superintendent knows, because he used to be a colleague of ours in the legislature, we have gone through every policy committee. The bill has passed the state assembly. It is now sitting in the Senate Appropriations Committee. So there will be a vote in the Appropriations Committee next week. If it advances from the Appropriations Committee, which we very much hope and expect that it will go to the Senate floor. It would then need to be passed by the state Senate, and then it would go to Governor Newsom's desk, and he would have about a month to decide whether or not to sign or veto the bill. We are hopeful, given the governor's leadership on these issues, given the fact that he signed the California Food Safety Act into law last year, given all the work that he has done and the first partner have done protecting young people and protecting children. We see this bill as very much aligned with his priorities and his values. So we would be hopeful that the governor would decide to sign it into law. And certainly we will make the case, and all of the parents and teachers and healthcare professionals will make the case as well. So we are not at the end of the journey. There's still work to be done, and we're going to lean into it really hard, but we are at a critical moment in the process, and really on the precipice of being able to send this bill to the governor's desk. So we have a question from Blake Jones. Hey, Blake. It says, is the Republican state lawmaker you're talking to on the East Coast working on a similar bill to this one, or on the bill you passed last year? More broadly, I wondered if you're talking to officials in other states about emulating this bill. Great question. So I should say that I have talked to both Democratic and Republican state lawmakers in other states, people who have affirmatively reached out to us. They read in the media about what California did last year with the California Food Safety Act. They've seen all of the just overwhelming evidence of the harm that a lot of these chemicals cause. It just makes sense to people. And so they have really reached out to us and asked us for advice about how to move this in their states. As I mentioned, I think at last count, there were more than 10 states, other states, that are seeking to emulate the California Food Safety Act, both red states and blue states, notably, and in both Democrats and Republicans that have picked up the mantle. A lot of them so far are working on emulating what we did last year with banning the 4 toxic chemicals from all foods. And that's why we think this bill will be a first in the nation bill that targets specifically the synthetic food dyes and is focused really on the food that we serve to the 6.3 million students in California public schools. I think we serve something, the superintendent can correct me if I'm wrong, about 3 million lunches a day and about 1.5 million breakfasts a day here in the state of California. So this is a first in the nation effort to focus on school food safety. But again, our expectation is that if we're successful in doing this, that in the same way other states will seek to replicate what California did on more broadly on food, that they would also jump into the arena and try to do work on protecting young people. Okay, we have some questions about from Ben. Thank you for what can I do to help this become law here in California and other states nationally. So thank you for that. You can weigh in with the members of the Senate Appropriations Committee, reach out to them, to your legislators, and obviously help spread the word. The other thing that I think is really important to do here and Leslie Ann hinted at this, is just to raise awareness of these issues. I had no idea. I mean, I'm not smart enough when I'm grocery shopping to pick up, a loaf of bread and turn it over and read that it has an ingredient like propylparaben or brominated vegetable oil. Those words don't mean anything to me. And so I always assumed that there was someone in Washington, D.C. who had our back. And when I found out that that wasn't the case, when I found out that the U.S. was so differently situated than the rest of the world, it actually made me angry. It made me angry that why are my kids less protected than kids in other countries are? And so I think talking to people about this, using your social media to help make people aware about it. I know, and maybe Leslie Ann has had this, and then the superintendent have had this experience talking to other parents who've kids who have ADHD or challenges in school. We trade tips. Some of the genesis of this bill was actually people reaching out to us, asking us to target these food dyes because they had seen what a big impact it had made on their students. Removing.
And I'll just add to, sorry, Assembly Member, having the conversation with your kids. My son is very clear that certain chips are not good to eat, and he understands what's in it. We talk to him as if he's an adult, and he goes, we don't eat this because of this, but here's an alternative to that. We make some of our foods too, and it's a way to discuss nutrition, but I think that's a very important part of it too, is being honest with your kids about, what's in things.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I feel like I'm filibustering here. So Mr. Superintendent, feel free to, and Leslie Ann, feel free to jump in as well. It's an excellent point. Okay, we have two more questions from Cassandra. What was the purpose of ever putting these substances in food, and what would be the food industry's resistance to removing them? So the purpose of these food dyes is to make foods really vibrant, to make them appeal. And I think it's you should ask the industry these questions. Why did they decide to do it? And I don't want to speak for them. But our sense, and from experts we talked to, is this is a way to make these foods really visually appealing to kids, right? If you make a soft drink that is, really bright yellow or really bright green, it's a great way to get the attention of people. And again, there's no nutritional value to any of these substances. They're not actually food; they're chemicals. And the point of them is for marketing. And so, the food industry has made a number of different arguments. They've been a little bit all over the place about their resistance to removing them from the bill. They've said that it's gonna be challenged for them. Although I can tell you, because I've had colleagues bring me back products from Europe from their summer vacation that are the exact same products that we get here in the United States, minus one ingredient, or with one ingredient with a substitute for them, that we know that the industry can do this. We're not guessing. We know because they're already making different versions of these products that are safe in other locations. Another thing that I learned over the course of doing this bill, and the superintendent may have known this, a lot of companies are already making a different version of products to sell in our schools. Because they, for example, chips, right? A lot of chips that are sold in the grocery store don't meet the basic nutritional standards that we have here in California to be sold in our schools. And so as a result of that, they already have a separate product line. The packaging looks exactly the same. So as a parent, you'd have no idea, or as a student, you'd have no idea, but they've actually already reformulated their product to sell in schools because they need to have more nutritional value to sell the product in school. But I think one of the thing about the industry's arguments is that they have not been particularly persuasive. And I think it's really noticeable that really no one other than, some color manufacturers, some of the chemical companies, some of the industry is opposing this bill. The teachers, the school administrators, the doctors, the nurses, the PTA, the parent advocates, the superintendent, everybody else is on one side of this. And I think that imbalance tells you a lot about the science and the policy behind this bill.
If I could, Assembly Member, I would just weigh in on the opposition and again commend you on your courage and your leadership in the face of that opposition to bring forward a measure that allows us to do the right thing. Some might make an argument and say, well, it's going to be greater cost, but what is the cost for our failure to act? When we know that we live in a nation where our children already have some of the highest rates of illness, asthma, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, we are constantly trying to change practices as it relates to what kids in our country eat. And it has an effect. As you've heard from the assembly member, you heard from Leslie Ann Brandt, you heard that when students experience, hyperactivity, that there's a connection to what they eat. And we know that there's a nexus to our students' success. This is an action that will allow them to be healthier, but also think about less behavior in our schools and in our classrooms. Our kids since the pandemic have experienced a higher rate of behaviors. The whole world has. And so why wouldn't we take the action that we know that is proven to help our students to be successful, to help them to be healthier, to help prevent cancer and other serious illness? And in the meantime, we can support California farmers and others who grow healthy food, fruits and vegetables and nuts and cereal and things that our kids can eat. There are alternatives, and we can help them to be successful. It's a win, win, win. And again, I'm grateful to you for your leadership. And I think if more parents and families learn about what's in the food and the impact that it has on our kids, and they speak out, that speaks to the previous question about how to help get this bill signed into law. The more that people speak out and say, you know what, I want better, it forces the industry to make some changes. And California's taking a big step here by saying, we're going to change the law to help the industry to get there.
Beautiful. I could not agree more strongly with everything that the superintendent just said. And I think he makes a good point too. The other hat I wear is chair of our budget committee. So I'm obviously thinking about the state's financial resources. So there's such a impetus for this bill from a perspective of doing right by our kids, of compassion, of supporting them and making sure they have the tools. But I actually think that there's also a really good argument that this bill is ultimately going to save the state of California money. Because you think about all of the resources that we put in to help kids who are struggling in the classroom, to help kids who have health issues. And I see this firsthand, and I see this both through personal experience and also the work that I do as a lawmaker. It's really expensive, all of that. And if what's driving that is that we're just feeding some kids a soft drink or some chips or a cookie that has chemicals that are impacting them in ways that are beyond their control, that's a really foolish use of resources. So I think in addition to making kids healthier and safer and better equipped to learn, this bill also has the opportunity to really save money for the state of California and to be a wise use of our resources. Final question is from Kristen Rogers. It says, what is it about titanium dioxide that will put the bill at risk of not receiving bipartisan support? Also, if the bill advances from committee next week, how much time would the Senate floor have to make a decision? So the titanium dioxide question. So there were some Republicans who were supporting the bill with the version of it that had titanium dioxide in it. We came to understand that one of the keys to removing some of the opposition from dairy farmers and others was to remove that chemical, that would allow us to really, I think, reach a broader consensus. And again, we think that, and it was a little bit of a different chemical actually than the other synthetic food dyes that fit together. So this is something, as the superintendent knows, every bill as it goes through the legislative process often goes through a series of amendments. It gets refined. And again, for me, because it is not just about this bill, it's about part of a broader national movement. It's about part of a broader fight to raise awareness, to put pressure on the FDA to step up to the plate and do its job, to get other states into the game here, that work of building this broader, really bipartisan coalition is very powerful. And one of the things that I was most proud of when this bill went through the assembly is that you had really progressive Democrats and also conservative Republicans standing up and speaking in support of it. And I think that is a good model. And one of the things that I think was noteworthy is what seems to tie a lot of these folks together, and it will be no surprise to the superintendent or to Leslie and Brandt, is that they're parents. The parents get this bill immediately, because they want what is best for their kids. They want their kids to be protected. They want opportunities for the best opportunities for their kids to learn in the classroom. And so it's really been a lot of Democratic and Republican parents that have come together that have put the energy behind this bill. Second part of the question, if the bill advances from the Senate Appropriations Committee next week, I believe that's a Thursday of next week, if I'm not mistaken, then it would have 2 weeks to clear the state Senate and clear the legislature and go to the governor's desk. So we are at crunch time. We have a constitutional deadline of August 31st at midnight here in the state legislature. That is a shot clock, as the superintendent knows. So if your bill passes at 12:05, it doesn't count. So really, we expect one way or another that this, if hopefully we'll get it to the governor's desk, but that would be no later than August 31st. And then the governor would have about a month to decide whether or not to sign or veto the bill. So we are really, as I said, we are at crunch time here. This is a key moment. And we're really, again, going to lean in really hard. We're feeling really good about the energy that we have behind us, the momentum we have behind us. Obviously, to open up the conversation to say that we have the support of the state superintendent of public instruction, who is looking out for our kids, who has been a champion for our kids, is a great way to start the conversation. But we're taking nothing for granted, and so we're going to work hard to get this bill through committee and onto the governor's desk. So thank you again, Mr. Superintendent. Thank you, Leslie Ann Brandt, for your beautiful words, and we appreciate this. And we will hopefully have more news to share on this soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.